Not funding this department at $1.5 trillion, I believe, is the greatest threat that our nation faces. Either we invest in our warriors at this moment of step change on the battlefield and growing threats, or this is all just talk.
Did you hear that? So our Secretary of Defense thinks the biggest threat to our national security is not giving the Pentagon all the money that they want. Now, Hegseth was testifying before the Senate Appropriations Committee alongside the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and that's, of course, General Dan Kane. And well, it's amazing because this hearing in particular is a perfect encapsulation of why it's easy to look like a fool when you just lie all the time. It's so easy to catch you in a lie, and that's really the theme of this entire hearing. Now, the point of the hearing also included the request from the Pentagon, from Pete Hegseth, to provide additional funding to the Pentagon as this war against Iran reignites. And that's a little bit of a disaster because we had a National Defense Authorization Act bill that passed, and it was close to $1 trillion. $1 trillion wasn't enough. So what Hegseth wants is a supplemental Pentagon funding bill in order to close that gap when it comes to paying for the war against Iran, the war that we're fighting on behalf of Israel. Are the Israelis having congressional debates or parliamentary debates about providing more funding for the war against Iran? No, of course they're not, because the stupid Americans are the ones bankrolling their war. So before we get to some of the highlights or lowlights featuring Hegseth in this hearing, I do want to give you the important context here, and that has to do with the numbers, the figures, the spending. So when it comes to additional spending on the Iran war, Hegseth put the cost of the Iran war so far at $37.5 billion, but that was up from the roughly $30 billion figure he presented to lawmakers earlier this month. Not in April, earlier this month. He's like, well, we just, you guys provided like $1 trillion for the Pentagon, and that was great. But now we need $30 billion more. And then weeks later, he's like, make that $37.5 billion. Okay. And by the way, Hegseth is lying in regard to how much we've already spent on the war against Iran, because the Defense Department's internal overall cost for the war so far is $80 billion to $100 billion, including the cost of repairing damaged US military bases. Just pull out. Please, pull out. Pull out like a college freshman. Pull out. We don't need those bases. But anyway, repairing damaged US military bases, replacing destroyed aircraft, and fully replenishing American weaponry, according to 3 US officials. So he's lying under oath, of course. He's done it before. Why wouldn't he do it again? There's no consequences. There's no justice. Now, while Hegseth lied and told senators that the war has only cost $37.5 billion, he also said that the Pentagon needs to double that amount to close the Pentagon's budget gap through September. The Defense Department is asking Congress for $67 billion in supplemental funding after $891 billion, close to $1 trillion, was approved to carry the Pentagon through September 30th. But apparently it's not enough for the, portion of the government that can't pass a single freaking audit. Where's that money going? Someone pocketing it? How are they unable to account for all that money? And more importantly, this is the more important part. How is it that Congress, year after year, continues to increase the Pentagon's budgets when the Pentagon has failed every single one of their audits? Is that how the real world works? So you tell me, if I decide I'm gonna take out a bunch of credit cards and just go nuts, I'm just gonna charge up a storm, max out those credit cards, and then refuse to pay them. Let's say that I am, I don't know, a year late on making a single payment. Do you think another credit card company is going to provide me a line of credit? No, of course not. But when it comes to the Pentagon, they get whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. It's disgusting. And today, Congress, the House in particular, voted in favor of passing the National Defense Authorization Act with the inclusion of Section 219, which would merge the IDF with the US military. Regardless of how much these members of Congress want to pretend like that's not what it would do, that is what it would do. You should read the provision for yourselves. But nonetheless, the House Republicans are currently working hard to provide the Pentagon with $73 billion in that supplemental funding bill. Remember, the Pentagon's asking for $67 billion. House Republicans are like, oh, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, national debt, we're fiscal conservatives. We know you want the $67 billion. We're gonna give you $73 billion instead. Okay.
Do you know your brain rot index? No, of course you don't. I didn't either because I didn't know what it was, but turns out you might want to, especially after hearing this. Did you know that the average American checks their phone over 200 times a day? That's about 5 hours of screen time a day on just your phone. Unfortunately, that means your brain is rotting. A little bit, but have no fear. I switched over to Noble Mobile, downloaded their Noble Mobile Life app, and was able to track my own brain rot index. It's 0. No, I'm just kidding. My number was not great, but now that I'm on Noble Mobile, getting way better. It tracks how much you use your phone, how often you pick it up, and even shows you how to save money on your phone bill by using it less. New members can even earn up to $100 cash back for keeping their brain rot index under 100, which means you are very unrotten. Okay, so you unlock all that when you join. So download the Noble Mobile Life app today, track your own brain rot index, and learn how you can save money and spend more time doing things that actually bring you joy instead of doom scrolling on social media. Check it out by heading to tyt.com/switch or by downloading the Noble Mobile app. By the way, don't tell Andrew, but if you're on Wi-Fi, you also don't use your data, so you're gonna get money back anyway. tyt.com/switch.
So with that very important context in mind, let's watch Hegseth fail and flail during this Senate Appropriations Committee hearing, starting with Senator John Ossoff, a Democrat, calling Hegseth's public statements about the war in question.
On day 14 of this conflict, Mr. Secretary, day 14, nearly 5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but their capabilities at the lowest level
you
they've been in a
stated
very
that
long time.
on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14, Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no? Was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the
question?
Iranian military is a historic military defeat,
answer the
and they're
question
ineffective
under oath?
in that context.
3 weeks later, you declared victory. That was now nearly 4 months ago.
So you see what's happening here. So on one hand, you have the television promoter version of Pete Hegseth, who's like, oh yeah, we're so big and bad. We destroyed, we demolished, we obliterated Iran. They're devastated. We won the war. Okay, great. Then why are you here asking for $67 billion in additional funding for the war? Like, why are you doing that if, you keep saying over and over again publicly that we've destroyed Iran, that they don't have the capability to, retaliate, that we've destroyed their Navy, that they can't build nuclear weapons anymore. We obliterated them. Why are you asking for money? By the way, Ossoff wasn't done yet. Here's more.
Early in the conflict, day 3, you said one of those core objectives was to, quote, destroy the missile threat. And as you restated on day 5, to, quote, obliterate Iran's missiles and drones. Those were clearly and repeatedly stated core objectives of the campaign, which 4 months ago you declared had been completed victoriously with every single objective achieved. Were those objectives achieved 4 months ago?
No one ever stated that every single missile was gone. Ultimately, combat ineffective means they're not able to dig them out of their UGFs and shoot
Had
at
the
us.
missile
It
threat
doesn't mean they
been
don't have
defeated 4
underground
months
facilities
ago?
where they put missiles in them and hold on to them because they're the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. So we never expected they would stop having capabilities to shoot. The question is at scale against an opponent like the United States of America, which went toe-to-toe with them and Iran couldn't.
You stated on March 8th, day 9 of the war on 60 Minutes, you assured the American people of Iranian surrender. Does that remain your prediction?
Ultimately, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon to threaten the United States of America. That has been the objective and it remains so.
Yeah, he didn't answer the question. Iran is not surrendering. Iran would never surrender. And right now, the current objective for this war, according to the Trump administration, is unclear. They keep saying Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. By the way, Trump just made a deal with Saudi Arabia that would allow them to have a nuclear program, basically setting the stage with war. Like, I guarantee you the United States will be at war with Saudi Arabia somewhere down the line. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. But anyway, putting that aside, I'll cover that in more detail a little later in the show today. This guy is embarrassing. Hegseth is embarrassing. And he is a far bigger threat to the national security of the United States than Iran is at this point. He's incompetent. He's bloodthirsty. I mean, he's proud of how bloodthirsty he is. He's made so many enemies against the United States through his rhetoric, through his actions, and through his boastful nature every time innocent people get killed. And then he makes a fool out of himself in front of Congress like this. It's amazing. Now, CNN actually put together a split screen featuring Hegseth's obvious lies. And I love this because it helps you really visualize what a piece of crap he is. Take a look.
Epic fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. Iran's navy is at the bottom of the sea. They would try to impose their will on the waterways in ways that the world would not like. Call it a toll, call it a fee, call it an exchange, call it control. They would do something that they would try to hold it at issue.
There is a crisis with those stockpiles right now in private industry.
That is a manufactured story that the media wants to peddle. And ultimately, our stockpiles are great and they'll only get stronger.
We face critical shortfalls that threaten our ability to also simply pay our service members, rapidly replenish equipment and munitions, and sustain vital operations without disruption.
So there you have it. He's an obvious liar. Just a side note, I love Senator Kennedy. Would they toll it in the middle of that hearing? That was great. Anyway, so the real question here is why? Why lie? Why not just be straight with the American people? Why not actually tell us what's going on? Because here's what I would venture to say. I'm never going to be supportive of fighting a war on behalf of any foreign country, including Israel, obviously. So there's nothing that Hegseth can say. There's nothing he can change about his own conduct that would make me change my mind about how stupid this war is. However, I do think that there would be Americans, certainly members of Trump's base, who are a little upset because they were lied to. But I think they would be a little more generous toward the Trump administration if they stopped lying incessantly to all of us, if they stopped treating us like we're morons. So why are they lying? What's going on here? Why not just give it to us straight? Tell us what's really going on. Well, one reason could be, market manipulation. If you've noticed, Trump and his cronies tend to talk about like, ooh, peace deal, peace deal. There's a peace deal on the horizon. They try to make it seem like the war isn't that bad. They downplay the war just to manipulate the markets. And then they ramp things up days later. So that's one explanation. But there's another explanation. I think this one's really important to the Trump administration and to the Republican Party. And that has to do with what we're learning through public opinion polling. This is an unpopular war with the American people overall. It began as slightly unpopular with Trump's base, but is now increasingly unpopular with Trump's base. And with the midterm elections coming up, I think the Trump administration, including Pete Hegseth, were under the impression that they could lie to us about what a success this war has been. Mission accomplished, mission accomplished. I mean, George W. Bush He is so happy. He's like, oh, they took my mission accomplished foible when it came to Iraq and just did it over and over again to the point where I look like I'm not that bad. There is no mission accomplished here. We have lost the war and there is no military option to win the war. So let's get into the polling real quick because a new Politico poll shows the following. Only 37% of self-identified MAGA voters say the US should continue its involvement only if it doesn't increase costs. And that's up from 29% who said the same in May. So 37% are like, if this is gonna increase costs, we want nothing to do with this war. And remember, Pete Hegseth is sitting before the Senate Appropriations Committee asking for more money to fight the war in Iran on Israel's behalf. There's more. Nearly 1 in 5 MAGA voters believe that the US should end its war in Iran, regardless of the costs. So even if this is like a fantasy scenario, this doesn't exist, but even if the war could continue and we wouldn't spend a single penny on it, you still have 1 in 5 MAGA voters who believe the US should end the war. Only 21% of MAGA believe the war is worth higher costs, while 28% say the US should not continue the war regardless of costs. And when asked why gas prices have increased since the president took office, the majority of respondents blamed the conflict, including 57% of MAGA voters and 63% of non-MAGA Trump voters. So the majority of Trump voters are blaming the war accurately. Okay, they're accurately blaming the war against Iran for higher gas prices at the pump. And I am so relieved to hear and read that they're based in reality. That's good. That's a good, not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's good news. So that's why you have the Trump administration lying about the successes of this war. They're hoping to, I don't know, maybe launder how devastating this war really is so they don't suffer the very real political consequences they're about to suffer in the midterms. 24% of MAGA voters blame the higher gas prices on supply chain disruptions, by the way, which is obviously associated with the war. I don't know why Politico had those two options in this list of reasons why gas prices are up. They're like the Iran war and then supply chain disruptions. That's the same thing. 21%, I'm sorry about that. So Trump's poor handling of the economy, 14% of MAGA voters feel that has contributed to higher gas prices, and 38% of voters overall feel that has contributed to higher gas prices. But one thing is clear, they're all blaming higher gas prices. Or higher gas prices is the main reason that they cited for why the war against Iran is the main reason they cited for higher gas prices. Anyway, I can't help myself. We just got to play one more video and then we'll wrap it up. And we're going to have a great interview with Julian Andreoni from Drop Site News. He's been asking some Congress members some pretty provocative questions. So we'll talk about that in the second hour of the show. But one more highlight from the Hegseth hearing.
The missiles that we saw hit recent targets are actually somehow more lethal, more deadly, more maneuverable than what we have seen in the past. So they're obviously improving their munitions. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, reminding everybody it was open before the war. Prices were lower for everybody until the war, and it still remains closed. And of course, tragically, service members, our warfighters who we care deeply about, are still dying. So what's different?
I think your characterization of this incredible effort as a failure is reckless. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it smears the sacrifice of the troops that are out there making on behalf of the American people to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter.
If you listen to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure.
He is a failure. He's definitely a failure. And the fake outrage that you just saw from Pete Hegseth, that reminds me of Israelis #1, right? Where they don't have an argument, so all they can do is shout anti-Semite over and over again. it has been years now, and literally that is their only argument. Oh my God, I don't have anything that can rebut what you just said. You're an anti-Semite. Literally, it happened today when I was debating Jenna Ellis on Piers Morgan Uncensored. In this case with Hegseth, I am so offended that you don't respect our service members. No, bitch, you don't support our service members. You are sending them to their deaths on behalf of a foreign country, you piece of crap. And you have the audacity to argue that anyone who poses an adequate, responsible question about our involvement in this war hates our troops. No, it's not 2003, homeboy, okay? You're not gonna be able to pull a fast one on us by claiming that we don't respect or love the troops in order to goad us or pressure us or bully us into pretending like this war is a great idea. It's not a great idea. It's not good for our service members. And the fact that we lost 18 service members already for a war that we are not gonna win, that has no military option for success, that has killed our own and injured hundreds of our own on behalf of a foreign country is infuriating. So the only people who have the right to feel genuine offense right now are the family members of those fallen soldiers and the American people who are forced to bankroll this devastating war that has led to inflation in our economy.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.